Hello and welcome to MEE Live. I'm Matilda Mallinson. It's Thursday, the 30th of July, 2026. Today, Saudi Arabia joins America's regional war, plus the battle for Palestinian identity inside Israel. First up, the headlines. America's war in the Middle East is threatening to engulf more and more states, with a reported drone strike in Egyptian territory representing the first of its kind, if confirmed as part of the wider conflict. It follows US-Saudi Arabian strikes in Iraqi territory on Wednesday morning, the first confirmed signs of direct combat from the kingdom. And an overnight 2-hour US bombardment on Iran struck a residential house on Qashm Island, killing 3 family members, including a father, mother, and their 2-year-old child. Kuwait also says 1 worker has been killed after an Iranian attack targeting a Chinese company building in the north. Dozens of Israeli soldiers have abandoned post at the notorious Sde Teiman prison following a dispute with commanders. All the officers to hell, these are the words being chanted by dozens of fighters from the Sabar battalion as they deserted the prison base. It follows an ongoing dispute over insignia, which has not been formally disclosed. Soldiers put up signs and symbols which were removed by commanders and in one incident destroyed by a commander using a sledgehammer. Israeli media reported the signs are part of the young veteran tradition in the battalion. Commanders said they do not align with IDF values. Regional elections in Pakistan-administered Kashmir have been marred by deadly violence. At least 30 people were killed this week in clashes between police and protesters. The region, formerly known as Azad Jammu and Kashmir, or AJK, has spent the summer under an unofficial state of emergency. A banned activist group has boycotted the vote, with demonstrations, sit-ins and road blockades. The Jammu Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee, or JAAC, is demanding the abolition of 12 assembly seats, which are reserved historically for Kashmiri refugees who mostly live elsewhere in Pakistan. Government officials justified the crackdown by alleging Indian-backed militias joined the protesters. Protesters say the seats are a means by which Islamabad exerts control over AJK's semi-autonomous assembly. Disrupted internet services and roadblocks make it difficult for news outlets to independently verify reports. The final rounds of the vote are scheduled for early August. Up next, Saudi Arabia joins the war and Iraq becomes the new battleground. Regional tensions are rapidly escalating once again as the war between the United States and Iran pulls in a powerful new player. For the first time on Wednesday morning, Saudi Arabia launched deadly strikes jointly with the US, hitting Iran-backed armed groups across Iraq. At least 20 members of Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, or PMF, were killed. Riyadh called it self-defense, a response to drone attacks on its oil facilities. Iran and Iraq called it a violation of Iraqi sovereignty. Iraq vowed to respond, but Baghdad is in a very difficult position, which we'll get into. The US-Saudi strikes followed Iranian strikes on US forces in Jordan, ending a fragile 13-day pause that many had hoped would hold. They came 1 week after Washington and Riyadh signed a landmark nuclear deal. It indicates a tightening of ties and a growing focus on the kingdom's deterrence in the region. Trump then met Saudi Arabia's defense minister, Prince Khalid bin Salman, following the joint attack. The other backdrop to consider here is the collapsing truce between Saudi Arabia and Yemen's Houthis, who have launched a naval blockade in the Red Sea. Saudi Arabia is now wedged between hostile Iran-aligned groups in Yemen to its south and in Iraq to its north. So has Saudi Arabia become a combatant in America's war on Iran, or a reluctant neighbor acting in self-defense? How will Iraq protect its national sovereignty, caught between US-Saudi airstrikes and forces loyal to Iran, and with 2 of the world's great oil choke points under threat? How close are we to all-out regional war? I'm joined now by Middle East analyst Zahra Ladha. Zahra, welcome to MEE Live. Saudi Arabia and the US struck Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, officially part of Iraq's security infrastructure, but with very close ties to Iran. Why does this make such a politically dangerous situation for Baghdad?
Thank you very much for having me. And now, as you've alluded to, these groups are part of the Iraqi state, part of the state security apparatus, part of Iraq's political life, but they maintain long-standing and deep ties with Tehran. Now, this presents a problem for Baghdad because it's been very difficult to keep these militias from entering the war with the US and previously the war with Israel, Iran, and the US. And this dynamic, where these groups are in the state but can't be constrained, often runs the risk of dragging Iraq into a wider confrontation with the region, even when officials in Baghdad would like to avoid this outcome. And that's what we've seen with this escalation recently on Tuesday. There's a real risk now of these militias launching reciprocal strikes in Saudi Arabia, dragging Iraq into a wider confrontation and seeing potentially civilians affected. I mean, the US and Saudi Arabia did mention that these attacks were on PMF bases across 7 areas in the country. But Iranian state officials and Iranian and Iraqi media also mentioned that some of these strikes hit near a pilgrimage site in the south of the country. And so what you're really seeing is that there's a potential for escalation that extends far beyond militia bases and militia activity and really poses a big risk to the country as a whole.
Iraq has a bit of a sovereignty issue here, doesn't it? Because they have come out and said that the US Saudi strikes on their territory were a violation of their sovereignty. But at the same time, Donald Trump told Fox News that the US Saudi strikes were done in coordination with the Iraqi government. Just explain to us how all of this fits together.
Absolutely. So the new Iraqi premier was instated in Baghdad earlier this year, and this followed several months of political deadlock in Iraq's capital over who this new prime minister would be. Now, the way Iraqi elections work is that you hold parliamentary elections, and then that parliamentary session would then elect a new leader. I wouldn't go as far to say that this is a nominal position, but it does depend on a consensus from a broad range of political parties, some of which these militias are embedded in. Now, when the new prime minister took office, he stated that his first priority was disarming Iran, or disarming militias, many of them linked to Iran, and attracting foreign investment. And to that end, he's attempted to cultivate strong relationships with Saudi Arabia. In a landmark visit to Washington a few weeks ago, signed several energy and economic partnerships with US firms, and really seems to be positioning Iraq not away from Iranian influence, but diversifying its relationships with the region and international partners. Now, this has been a problem in Iraq because one of the preconditions for US investment, also it seems, is the disarming of these Iran-linked militias inside the country. And this is where it becomes a problem for Baghdad. Baghdad cannot be seen to be siding with a foreign attacks on its land. Also cannot be seen to be supporting the militias when its stated mandate is to disarm them. And now this puts Iraq on a collision course, maybe with militias in its own country, or maybe directly with the US. And that is the balancing act that Zaidi now, the new prime minister, is trying to manage.
And indeed, in response to the strikes, the PMF has given Baghdad until the 6th of August to respond. Realistically, what can Baghdad do, and could Iraq become the war's next battlefield?
There is a credible risk of that happening, and what I'd likely expect to see in Baghdad within the coming week is some sort of statement of condemnation and some sort of reassurance to these groups that these attacks won't continue. And really, that's what that statement points towards. It's not really a question of Iraq launching some sort of reciprocal strike in Saudi Arabia. That seems to be beyond the realm of possibility in this scenario. But it's really about the state showing these groups that their interests will be preserved and they will be protected in the event of foreign attacks against them. And this is really, really crucial, even though Baghdad is moving to disarm these groups, because any SSR process, any security sector reform process, relies on trust between these parties, right? And when you have a situation where the Iraqi PM is in Washington one day, potentially traveling to Saudi Arabia, that trip has been cancelled for now, and those states are attacking these groups, you do not have the conditions for disarmament or a political process that moves forward.
And what is Saudi Arabia's game plan here? Has MBS given up on regional de-escalation as the ultimate priority?
I think the strikes that we saw on Tuesday do signal an attempt to restore deterrence or display it, but I wouldn't go as far to say as they've given up on regional diplomacy. It is of note that they haven't struck Iran directly, despite coming under repeated Iranian fire in the last few months. or haven't done so in an overt manner and claimed these attacks. They've opted instead to target groups in Iraq, opted to launch strikes on the Houthis in Yemen, who declared a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia, and have really pushed Saudi Arabia to renew that conflict with them. So what we're seeing is a targeted strikes to restore deterrence in a way that doesn't push the entire region towards further escalation. And Iraq is, difficult to say, a good arena for this, but the best option for Saudi Arabia in these current circumstances, because there is an expectation that Baghdad will find a way to rein these militias in or manage their expectations, or they can resolve this in a diplomatic manner. Whereas a direct Saudi attack on Iran, for example, likely would result in further escalation that maybe other GCC states might join and extend this war.
I understand that, but isn't there a risk that this could backfire and that by striking Iraq, rather than weakening Iran's grip on the territory, Saudi Arabia actually gives Tehran exactly the narrative it wants?
I don't think it's a question of weakening Iran's grip on Iraq. I think this is the question that's been posed to us policymakers for a really long time. How do we reduce Iran's influence in Iraq? Realistically, there is no real way to reduce their influence. There's a way to recalibrate it. I mean, they share a land border. They have cultural ties, they have security cooperation. The aim of the game now is to formalize those ties through a bilateral capacity rather than an informal one. So these strikes really show Tehran we mean business. There's been reports that several Iranian advisors were also called in the strike. So it is a way to show, we will escalate and we will retaliate, but not in a way that blows the situation out of proportion. But the dynamics in Iraq, when we're talking about Iran's influence, these things are being decided in rooms in Baghdad, among militia bases, in rooms in Tehran and rooms in Washington, as a very complex process, which includes disarmament, which includes sanctions, and which includes kind of the regional conflict that we're seeing right now.
And now to Saudi Arabia's south, Yemen's Houthis are considering charging commercial vessels to pass through the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. Iran is now using Hormuz and, through its allies, Bab al-Mandab as leverage. How much of the region's oil lifeline can Tehran credibly threaten, and how far can they spread the regional war as a result of this?
Iran's stated objective since the beginning of this war on the 28th of February has been to regionalize it and expand it so it doesn't bear the brunt of this conflict. And the second part of Iranian strategy, as you've alluded to, is increasing the economic cost of this war for everyone that's participating in it. And beyond that, really, it's now a global issue. We can expect to see continued regionalization because this is how Iran escalates the conflict. And we've seen an impasse in recent days over negotiations and continued strikes. The real core issue seems to be the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Iran is very unwilling to give up its leverage there. It considers it as its core deterrence capability, and the US is now demanding that Iran hands over what it considers its core leverage before negotiations even begin. Now, we can expect this regionalization war to continue so long as Iran believes that this is more beneficial for its interests than taking a bad deal that sees it lose its leverage.
Zahra Ladha, thank you.